Have you ever wondered why life seems so full of tasks and so empty of meaning? We live in an age of access, speed, and efficiency. Everything is instantaneous, everything is measured. We have technologies that our grandparents could never have imagined. But at the same time, a deep inner silence takes hold of many. It is the emptiness that no one sees but feels. Max Weber, one of the fathers of modern sociology, saw this before anyone else. For him, what was to come with the advance of rationality was not liberation, it was imprisonment. Not a prison with walls and bars, but an invisible prison, mental, cultural, and spiritual. The promise of modernity was simple: to abandon the irrational, the mystical, the sacred in exchange for progress, organization, and control. But Weber saw a very high price in this exchange: the death of meaning. In the ancient tradition, the world was enchanted. Nature had a soul. Life had a purpose that transcended the here and now. There was mystery, but with modernity came the obsession with reason, efficiency, and calculation. Everything that could not be measured was considered useless, and in the process, we lose something essential: the connection with the why. Today, we work like never before. We produce more than any other generation, but the fundamental questions: for what? For whom? For what purpose? Are avoided. Talking about the soul has become a weakness. Talking about vocation has become romanticism. What was once a mission has become a goal. What was once sacred has become a spreadsheet. Weber called this the disenchantment of the world. It's not that the magic is gone, it's just that we've been taught not to see it anymore. Everything became matter, function, utility. The forests ceased to be sacred. Work ceased to be called upon. Time became capital, and the human being, a cog. This is the starting point for understanding Weber's profound critique of the modern world. Before he was a theorist, he was a man who saw the danger of living without meaning and dared to write about it, because sometimes the greatest enemy of the soul is the routine you accepted without realizing it. Max Weber believed that the greatest symbol of the modern world was not freedom, but an iron cage, not a prison imposed by force, but a trap built by the logic of efficiency. A rational, predictable, ordered structure, and profoundly inhumane. He observed how, over time, the search for organization transformed everything into a system. The school has become a grade factory, the company a performance assembly line. Even faith was transformed into an institution. Dogmas, hierarchies, numbers of believers. On the surface, everything looks like progress, but behind the scenes, something subtle is happening. People become functions. You are no longer John, Mary, or Carla. You are a position, a number, a report. If he leaves, someone else takes his place without the system being shaken. It is as if the human being had been replaced by the role he plays, and value was now measured not by essence, but by usefulness. Weber called this the bureaucratization of life. Bureaucratic logic demands rules, procedures, predictability. It eliminates the unexpected, the mysterious, the affection, because these are uncontrollable variables. But what makes life human is precisely what cannot be controlled. The iron cage works because it feels safe. You have your salary, your routine, your bills paid. But at the cost of spontaneity, you stop creating and start executing. You stop feeling and start calculating. And when you realize, the soul has already adapted to captivity. The most tragic thing for Weber is that this imprisonment is not forced, she is accepted, because we have been told that this is the right path, that success resides in that narrow corridor. And the more we obey this logic, the stronger it becomes, and the harder it becomes to break out of it. Weber saw modernity as a technical advance that gave us power, but took away depth. Today, we are free to choose anything, except living outside the system. Freedom has become a choice of brands. Autonomy has become a simulation of control, but the essence, what would really make us feel alive, was being left aside. The cage is always open, but no one knows where the door is anymore. Max Weber did not just talk about social theories. He talked about what cannot be seen but can be felt. He spoke of the anguish that arises when life loses its why. And according to him, this loss was not an accident. It was murder, slow, silent, and institutionalized. With the arrival of modernity, the logic of efficiency began to dominate everything. It doesn't matter what you feel, only what you deliver. It doesn't matter who you are, only what you represent. And when it infiltrates the most intimate structures of life, work, family, faith, the meaning doesn't die suddenly. It fades slowly. In the past, work was seen as a vocation, Beruf, as Weber said, a calling. Doing something not just for money, but for honor, for legacy, for mission. Today, for many, work is just a contract, a mechanical obligation between Monday and Friday. In companies, you are trained for goals, not for purpose. In studies, you are evaluated by performance, not by understanding. In personal life, even relationships have become a calculation. Whether it is worth it, whether it gives a return, whether it is worth it. And so, the world lost its charm. Poetry became content. Art has become a market. Spirituality has become a product. What does not generate profit is discarded. What cannot be quantified is ignored. What does not adapt to modern logic is labeled as useless, weak, outdated. Weber called this the rationalization of life, a process that exchanges wisdom for specialization, truth for performance, presence for productivity, and the result? A human being who knows a lot, but doesn't know why he lives. The drama is silent. People who wake up every day, do their job, achieve their goals, and feel like they're dying inside. It's not depression, it's not sadness, it's meaninglessness. Something the current system is not designed to deliver. Weber saw this forming in the early 20th century, but today, in the 21st century, this prophecy has become everyday life. We are more connected and more lonely, busier and emptier, more informed and more lost. Because when you kill meaning, all that's left is survival disguised as routine. Weber observed a phenomenon that, at first glance, seemed like a triumph of humanity: the emergence of experts, people highly trained in specific areas, capable of operating with surgical precision within complex systems. Doctors who understand everything about an organ, but not about the human being. Economists who master formulas, but don't understand poverty. Politicians who know how to govern, but don't know how to listen. For Weber, the problem was not technical knowledge. It was the disconnect between knowledge and meaning. The modern specialist knows how to do it, but he has forgotten why he does it. Your competence is functional. Your vision is limited. Your world is reduced to formulas, procedures, and results. And what happens when the entire society is ruled by soulless experts? The machine works, but no one understands where it is going or why. Decisions are made based on reports, not values. People become human resources. Health becomes bed management. Education becomes a performance indicator. It is rationalization to the extreme. Everyone knows a part, but no one sees the whole. The teacher understands the subject, but does not know the student. The manager understands the process, but does not realize the human impact. The scientist analyzes the data, but does not question what the data hides. This fragmentation of knowledge is what Weber called blind specialization. Each person becomes a technical piece, a function operator. And in the midst of this, consciousness disappears. Weber believed that this way of living would create a new type of human being, intelligent, efficient, and spiritually empty, a person who solves problems but does not recognize dilemmas. Who knows how to function, but doesn't know how to live. Modernity has taught us to resolve the how of everything. How to be productive, how to grow fast, how to deliver more. But he abandoned the why. Why live like this? Why rush so much? Why measure everything? When experts dominate, wisdom dies. And without wisdom, there is no direction. Execution only. Weber did not condemn progress, but he warned, without a soul, progress becomes a steamroller. You move forward, not knowing what you're crushing. Max Weber coined one of the most profound expressions in modern sociology: the disenchantment of the world. It's a simple and at the same time devastating idea. It means that, with modernity, the world has lost its magic, not because it ceased to exist, but because we stopped seeing it. In the traditional view, life was surrounded by mystery. Thunder was more than sound. Death was more than the end. Love was more than chemistry. Everything carried a breath of meaning, an invisible presence, a significance greater than the immediate. But with the advancement of science, reason, technology, we have been turning off these lights one by one. The world was becoming explainable, and at the same time, bland. What was once a symbol has become a given. What was once a ritual has become a habit. What was once divine has become decorative. Weber was not against scientific knowledge, but he knew that reducing the world to what is measurable is to amputate the soul of reality. Human beings need more than objective answers. They need meaning. Disenchantment does not just mean the end of religious beliefs. It means the collapse of the symbolic meaning of life. Time is no longer sacred. Words no longer carry weight. Gestures no longer have memory. And without that, everything becomes a thing. People saw contacts. Love becomes experience. Marriage becomes a contract. Faith becomes performance. Ultimately, disenchantment pushed us toward a functional, but superficial, life. Everything works, but nothing vibrates. Everything is useful, but almost nothing is beautiful. The sacred was hidden, and what was left was a sterile routine, where mystery was exchanged for productivity. Weber saw this as the fate of Western rationality, a civilization that has killed its own gods, and now wanders around trying to replace them with goals, status, and consumption. But there is a silent consequence: the increase in existential anguish. Because no matter how much human beings evolve technically, their soul still needs to kneel before something greater, and when he doesn't find it, he gets sick. The modern world is full of efficiency, but it is dying of thirst for meaning. And maybe that's why so many people feel like they're in the right place, doing everything right, and yet they feel like there's something missing that can't be explained. We live in an age that prides itself on its freedom. We have freedom of choice, expression, consumption, movement. But what Weber forces us to ask is, does this freedom really liberate? In his view, modernity exchanged external authority, such as tradition, religion, or myth, for impersonal systems. Now, no one directly orders you around, but they all follow the same system, that of performance, progress, usefulness. You choose your career, yes, as long as it's productive. You follow your dream, as long as it makes a profit. You create your own path, as long as it fits within the prevailing logic. It's a conditional release. You can be whoever you want inside the cage. This is the new form of control. There is no more physical oppression. There are metrics. There are invisible expectations. There are constant comparisons, goals disguised as ambition, algorithms that shape desires. You are not forced into anything, but you feel like you need everything. You need to be productive. You need to be online. You need to show results. And when you stop, you feel guilty, because the system doesn't hold you with chains. It holds you with promises. Max Weber saw this clearly. Modern freedom is an illusion built on the rationalization of life. It lets you choose anything, except living outside the game. That's why, even with so many options, so many people feel like there's no way out. It's not about politics, it's about the soul. To realize that, while we talk about freedom, many are just obeying a new type of master, the impersonal system that demands results without ever asking how you are. This false freedom is what Weber pointed out as the new face of disenchantment, a world where you feel responsible for your own suffering. Because after all, you were the one who chose. But did you really choose, or did you just follow the script that everyone follows, with the only difference being that you thought it was yours? Modernity gave you autonomy, but took away the symbolic ground. He gave you choices, but he didn't teach you to choose with your heart. And now, surrounded by options, you hardly know what you really want, because where there is no meaning, even freedom becomes a burden. If you've ever felt that, even when you're tired, you have to keep going, that you can't stop for even a second, then you've already experienced what Max Weber predicted. In modern times, life has become a gear, and the gear doesn't allow rest. Weber observed that the modern system operates like an autonomous machine, cold, precise, uninterrupted. The logic is simple and brutal. Whoever doesn't produce is replaced. Whoever slows down gets left behind. Those who question themselves are late. In this model, stopping is not a right, it is almost a sin. The culture of always busy has replaced silence. A busy schedule has become a sign of value. Exhaustion became a medal. The result? People who live to function, who wake up tired and go to sleep anxious, who work more but feel less alive, who are always running, but without knowing where to. Weber called this the Protestant work ethic turned modern obsession. Work, which was previously seen as a way to connect with the divine, has become just a means of material ascension. Productivity has become a religion, and rest, heresy. You may not be in a factory, but you're stuck on your cell phone, your email, your performance, your invisible goals that follow you even at home. It's the mental factory that never turns off. The machine that demands constant movement but offers no meaning in return. In this scenario, the body gets tired, but the soul gets sick. Because we weren't made to function, we were made to live. And living includes pause, includes silence, includes creative emptiness. Weber saw this as one of the most serious symptoms of modernity, the inability to stop. Because whoever stops, thinks. He who thinks, feels. And whoever feels it, realizes that something is wrong. But the system doesn't want that. He prefers you to keep spinning. No time to question. No strength to resist. That's why healing often begins with the simple act of stopping. To silence. To get out of gear, even for a moment. Because only in silence is it possible to hear what the system has deafened. The call of your own soul. Max Weber observed a cruel detail in the advancement of modern rationality. Everything that cannot be measured loses value, and what can be measured is simplified until it becomes a number. Life has become statistics. Happiness became a graph. The human being has become a given. Today people ask, how much do you earn? But rarely, how do you feel? They want to know how many followers you have, not how many deep conversations you've had. Metrics have become more important than experience. The number replaced the narrative. You are no longer a being with mysteries and depths. You are a performance score, engagement index, consumption profile. The system has learned to reduce everything to something manipulable. Because, as Weber noted, instrumental reason, the one that only thinks about efficiency, needs to eliminate what is subjective. And in this, we lose precisely what makes us human. Pain became pathology. Faith turned into superstition. Love has become an algorithm. Even time was captured. Before, time was experience. It was season. It was presence. Today, it is resource. Timed, segmented, optimized. You no longer live the days, you manage them. And the more life is converted into numbers, the more empty we feel. Because the soul does not fit into tables. Beauty cannot be measured. The meaning is not measurable, and to try to do that is to betray the essence of existence. Weber saw this as the ultimate point of disenchantment, when even feelings become functions. You need to be happy, not because you feel it, but because it is expected. You need to perform well emotionally, or you will be seen as unstable. Even pain needs to be converted into content, justified, adapted to the social algorithm. In this world, the soul becomes performance, silence becomes absence, doubt becomes weakness. But what is truly human lives on the margins, in what escapes, in what overflows, in what doesn't fit. Weber was not just describing a phenomenon, he was issuing a warning. By trying to measure everything, we can miss what matters most. And perhaps that is the greatest tragedy. Modern civilization has become adept at telling, but forgot how to tell stories. Modernity promised us comfort, and he did. Technology, medicine, transportation, information, Everything has advanced in extraordinary ways. But with this advancement, something was left behind: the depth of human experience. Max Weber observed that the more technology advances, the more functional life becomes. Things work. Machines respond. Responses arrive in seconds. But what about the meaning? Behind the efficiency, a new kind of emptiness has set in. It is not the emptiness of lack, it is the emptiness of meaningless saturation. You can have it all and still feel like something essential is missing. The technique is powerful, but it gives no direction. It shows the how, but never the why. And that's where the crisis lies. We know how to build a bridge, but we no longer know how to cross to the other side of ourselves. You can have access to all the courses in the world, but not know what you want in life. You can communicate with anyone and never feel heard. You can be surrounded by information and never attain wisdom. The technique organizes, resolves, simplifies. But meaning feeds on complexity, of contradictions, of silence, of delay, of experiences that do not fit into a tutorial. Weber saw this conflict as one of the central dramas of our time: the triumph of instrumental reason and the death of existential reason. One thinks of means, the other thinks of ends, but today, only one has a voice. And this condemns us to a life of high performance and low presence. Decisions are made based on data, but without soul. Relationships are quick, but superficial. Life goes on, but it doesn't arrive. That's why so many people feel tired without even knowing why. The technique solved the visible problems, but the invisible ones, those who live in the heart, remain there, expecting something that logic cannot deliver: meaning. And it is at this point that Weber's thought reaches its peak. It is not enough for the world to work. It needs to make sense. Without this, all progress is a path without a map, a race where no one knows what they are trying to achieve. Max Weber was not a prophet of chaos. He did not write about the modern crisis to make us give up, but to wake us up. Because the problem with modernity is not progress, it is the loss of direction. It is not the advancement of technology that destroys the soul. It's when we forget that the soul exists. At the heart of Weber's critique is an invitation: regain the meaning of life, even inside the cage. Yes, the iron cage is real. The system is impersonal, the logic is cold, the gears turn. But human beings can still choose how to inhabit this world. It can still resist. Weber believed in the ethics of responsibility. Even without guarantees, even without heavenly promises, the individual can act with conscience. You can take on a purpose, even if the world doesn't reward you for it. It's about living with integrity, to recover the sacred in everyday life, to transform work into a vocation, even when it seems like just a job, to give weight back to words, intention to gestures, soul to choices. It also means allowing yourself to stop, look inside, silence the noise of the world to hear what still beats. Weber did not believe in easy ways out, but I believed in the possibility of an awakening, that even in the midst of cold rationality, we are still capable of seeking and living that which escapes us, but calls us. And this call is not in the manuals. It's in the art that still moves you. In the conversation that gives you goosebumps, in the silence that heals you, in the question you insist on asking, why am I here? Recovering the invisible is remembering that living is not just functioning, it's feeling. It is to doubt, it's to imagine, it's walking, even when you can't see the whole path. Max Weber did not leave ready answers, but it left traces. And perhaps the most important of them is this: in a world that has killed meaning, whoever seeks meaning becomes a revolutionary. If this video made you rethink your routine, your work, or the meaning of your life, so don't let this reflection stop here. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't live on autopilot. We remember why it started. Because in a world that has erased meaning, thinking is already an act of resistance. And you are not alone.